There we go. All right, everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us on this April 2nd Werewolf Technical Steering Committee meeting. Got a few action items from the past to review, but then our discussion topics as it sits for the agenda today is to talk about the accidental deletion of V460 and its restoration, the release
No, it's-
status of 461. Hmm?
Yeah, that's not.
uh, Planning for a 462, find out if there's any progress on an SC-25 buff, and then Christian, if you're able, willing, and ready, maybe a presentation or description of the current PR for
Yeah,
stateful
yeah.
provisioning.
What's going on there? But it's quite simple. It's a quite simple code.
Okay. I haven't looked at the new one yet.
Ooh.
Um, and then is Ian here? Did I mark him down? Yeah. And then Ian, I didn't talk with you about this before, but I thought we'd check in and see how things are going with Debian and Ubuntu support.
Sure.
And and I don't have you on this list from before. Where are you coming from, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm at Sandia National Labs.
Oh, okay, great. Welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
So anything to add to that agenda before we get started? All right. Um, so first thing on action items from before, Christian, I suspect I don't think I've seen any movement on this yet. No, obviously, it's not urgent or anything. Just checking in.
No, 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 no. You mean the slice thing?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
just if we accidentally see it.
I think I'm gonna remove it from the action items. We don't need to keep checking in on it. It's just, it's a reminder that
Yeah.
we're in agreement. It's a good thing to do. Um. Uh. Rose, have you had a chance to dig into? I know we talked a little bit, but have you looked into the Werewolf website and where you would want to document the steering meeting and the steering committee, things like that on the Werewolf website?
So I did, and I actually shared with you a document.
Oh no.
So I can definitely do that again. I think I put it in both actually, the Werewolf Slack.
Let me see if I can go find that. So what
Um,
did it go to the TSC thing? Yeah, okay. You did share
yes,
this.
yes.
You put it there, and did you put it somewhere else too? I'm gonna put it somewhere that I can link to it from so that it doesn't disappear with the rest of Slack.
Yeah, I mean it's inside my drive.
Okay. I'm
So
gonna put it in the werewolf one
cool.
real quick. Thought there was, oh yeah, here it is. Maybe. Actually, maybe we'll move that into the drafts location while we're discussing it. Oh, come on. There we go. And if you don't mind, uh, what can you tell us about this? I'll pull it up in a second, so that we can look at it. But what is there
Yes.
to say?
So, the basic gist is that the Werewolf website, so werewolf.org, is kind of back-ended into GitHub, which is not a familiar space for me. So Jonathan had said, that's okay. fine with continuing to kind of update things and do what he needs to do in there to keep it updated, but it would just be helpful to kind of like organizationally, right, conceptually, like, hey, where should this go? And then he can just go in the back end and do it. So I suggested here, I just took a screenshot of the page where I think we should add a fourth box. So we've got 3 boxes now under community help, one for documentation, and that goes obviously to the documentation, one for the Slack community, one for the GitHub. And I suggested that we should have one here for the YouTube channel where these recordings are. So the recording of these technical steering committee, then that could be accessed there. And then that would give them also the opportunity to go directly to the YouTube channel and then also get you know, all the updates of these. And then probably inside, because you know how you can add a description on all of the YouTube channels, you could add a link to actually joining. Or I don't know, because it kind of seemed a little bit like I don't know who you want to come to these meetings. I mean, obviously, if it's public, anybody can come.
Yeah, so right now they're technically open to the public, but someone has to reach out on Slack to get the invite. And I think my preference, not as the sole person who would be the decider, but like my preference would be to keep doing that just because I don't know how likely it is, but I'm always afraid of like random drive-by people coming in and
Yeah, totally.
yeah, making trouble
Yes,
in
that
the
definitely happens for Zoom. But
Zoom thing.
even in the description of the technical steering committee YouTube video recording, in
Yeah.
that description, you can say, if you're interested in joining us,
Oh
please
yeah,
click here to join the Slack and get involved.
yeah, for sure. I don't have a particular complaint against a fourth box here that would be for like steering committee stuff and link to the YouTube channel. Um, there's a part of me that like wants to be a stickler and say, well, that's not about help, it's about a broader community thing. But we could easily like in the future, if we wanted, like rebrand this to just community instead of community help, and then it would fit. But Christian and Jeremy, what do you guys think?
Would it also be sensible, possible is definitely to add a wiki there? The thing is with a wiki would be that it then tended to be outdated if we don't keep an eye on it. So the documentation should also always be kind of the only source of truth, but still kind of sometimes some tricks and things. And
If we were going to do a wiki, I think I'd just turn on the wiki in the GitHub thing because there's
I know
already
that's exactly what I was also thinking of in just turning that on. The thing is it useful?
Well,
I
what
would be
what does the wiki do?
it would just be like that users could put their own documentation in there. But I think I'd rather encourage people to submit documentation stuff to the
Yeah, but it could be more like a wiki where we then, when we create it, we just say, okay, this is for frequently asked questions or things we have now in Slack, and which then at a given point, perhaps just pulling over the most useful Slack answers.
yeah, like a dump, not a dumping ground, but like a transition period for because Slack disappears, a place to put stuff. I could see that.
Yeah, and that's yeah.
So, I mean, Slack, I mean, I like Slack, but I keep thinking about all the sites like this having mailing list user forums because it doesn't disappear. When people have
Yeah.
issues that crop up that are separate from the coding problems or bugs need to go into GitHub. But there's also all of the help, workarounds, all the other stuff that is more operationally related. And you're right, Slack disappears. Is it better to have, or is there a way we could set up a forum?
So Rose had an idea or brought an idea anyway. I think it came from someone beyond Rose, but she brought the idea of um, connecting Slack, or maybe at least like Slack help, to a Signal channel and not that we would then point people to use Signal, but then it would become a permanent store of the conversation that had happened there. So that might be one solution to that. Not Signal. What is it?
Tricks.
Matrix.
Mm.
Um,
The-
but yeah, I admit that it's a problem. I'm uncertain what to do. Like I recognize the precedent of mailing list.
Yeah.
I personally can't see myself putting time into responding on a mailing list, so
You don't want
I
another
worry about
form
it.
to go and connect into?
No, I do not, in fact. Um,
Well,
uh,
from a practical perspective, different communities have different norms, and you kind of have to follow those norms. And the sysadmin folks seem to really gravitate towards Slack as opposed to email. HPC syspros is an example of that. So I don't know if it's the work folks do as it, or is it just a cultural thing? But there's something to be said about respecting those norms.
but at least for the one question of it should to link, like right now you would go to werewolf.org and have no idea that the technical steering committee exists, let alone that we have these meetings. Um, is there any objection to adding a box to this page that that would describe that the TSC exists and link to the YouTube channel where there's recordings of it?
Another option would be to have an about, and then it would talk about, the history of Werewolf, and then governance, and then under there would be the technical steering committee and things like that.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say the same. There's probably next to getting help, there should be about talking
Okay.
about the history of Werewolf and all the, because it's got a fairly long history.
And what are the goals and things like that? It's a community driven, blah, blah, blah. And that can help folks in their decision-making process if they want to go down that route, open source and all that neat stuff. And showing that that Werewolf has an open technical steering committee goes a long way as well. It's not something a vendor throws over the wall every 6 months.
Rose, any concerns with that? I know that
No,
you
sounds
you
great.
need help making the new page, but does that sound okay to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's something we can draft up and edit, I imagine, together.
Yeah, if you just make content, I'll put it on the site. And I did in fact see that. It's just I don't know, it feels like a while ago now, so I had forgotten. But yeah, thank you for your grace and patience of me having forgotten.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, I will put an action item on here.
It is an interesting point that Timothy you bring up about kind of, we do Slack, we like Slack. So to me, that kind of is going in the direction of how do we figure out how to get the paid version of Slack? Is that kind of where you're going with it? Because how else then would we have all the, recorded notes and be able to keep it for longer than the 90 days?
Matrix is a solution to that. Sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, you can feed it off in Slack. A lot of times with Slack, it's hard to go back even if you do have the paid version and get the answers, because the context is not there necessarily. So
The biggest impediment for the paid version is to do it, we need to set up some kind of financial entity that owns
Right.
the money that was paid for it. And
it's not cheap.
yeah,
Okay,
it
so
can
the
be
Matrix-
okay, but it's unbounded because it's based on the number of people using it, and that can explode, and who knows how expensive it would get.
True. Okay, so then the matrix, it keeps Slack and keeps the integrity of Slack, doesn't add another thing that you have to maintain, but then it does.
In theory, there would be a place you could go to get the information, but it wouldn't be the most straightforward thing. It would be an answer, but not a great answer.
Okay. Is anyone using Matrix right now for any of their other projects?
Yeah, it pops up in various open source things.
Yeah.
I used
And
it
I think
to try
Matrix is just a protocol.
Yeah. I used it to try and get in touch with the people that maintain Cockpit, and it was not a particularly good experience, although I think some of that is just getting used to it in the first place. I had to figure out how to do indexing locally, that kind of thing, in
And
order
it's
to
just
do
did
searches.
in multiple clients, and the way the security model goes, it's rather difficult. So, yeah, I'll echo Jonathan's. It's not necessarily user friendly as well. And the ones I'm on, I never go back anyways to look for answers.
Yeah.
A lot of our quality conversations happen in GitHub issues, right?
Yeah, there's that too. All right, let's move on to the next one. Christian, we had talked about a semi-regular, hey, by the way, you should buy commercial support for Warewulf from, and then contacts for CIQ and SUSE. Rose, you were going to try and see if you could find someone just via the SUSE website, but in lieu of that, do either of you have a contact for this yet that we could use for future
Not
messaging?
really, but you can always use me as a contact, kind of.
Okay.
And it's including distribution, so you don't need a separate contract for that.
You just get Werewolf support with SUSE Linux Enterprise?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah. At least it's in SP7.
Okay. Rose, anything else to add for that? Otherwise, I'll probably just consider
No.
this.
I reached out on the website and kind of let them know the deal, but I guess that was too weird or confusing, so I have not gotten a response back.
All right.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is the thing we added. So, or wait. Oh, I removed it up top, but I was going to mention here. I did merge Alma Linux images in the Werewolf node images repository. We had two different PRs. I have merged Tim's because it did more things and integrated into the CI/CD, and all of that was good. So thank you very much for putting that together, Tim.
Welcome. And
All right.
I just discovered the other one used the minimal container, which uses, I think it uses different libc, and that always scares me when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I would at least want it to be closer to the Rocky Linux one that we were already putting out just to match expectations there. So I think this is the right thing. All right, let's talk about what happened to 460. Tim, do you want to talk about the start of what happened, or do you want me to just do the talking?
If you want to publicly scold me, or I can, grovel. I was working away at night and it was late on my own personal stuff. And of course, I share my GitHub is not separate between personal and professional. That's the only account I actually share. And I was cleaning things up and I happened to be on the wrong page and hit delete release because I wanted ARM binaries. And I went, oh, it was on the Warewulf page and realized I had those privileges. So part of that was me being sloppy. Part of that was me not doing my due diligence to understand what privileges I actually had. I'm just not paying attention. So I accidentally deleted the release.
So in terms of what access Tim had, this was a surprise to me as well. So I did some research. I expected that release management would be restricted to there's like an administrator and owner role in GitHub, and I had expected that release management would be restricted to one of those roles. But apparently, this access is available to repository writers, just blanket. And I did a little bit of research, and you straight up cannot grant someone write access, which is required in order to allow them to sign off on PRs in such a way that it fulfills PR sign off requirements, without giving them the ability to delete releases, which seems wild to me. I opened a support request with GitHub. They asked me for more detail. I have given that to them. I don't think they've responded, but because it's in my personal account, just the same as Tim has expressed here, it's possible that I haven't seen the reply over in my personal email, so I need to go check that again. Just so the remediation. we recreated the release, and Tim found the release in archive.org, so we were able to get the same release notes and paste them back into the release. And then we don't have an on-demand or on dispatch, I think is what it's called. We don't have a way to fire the create a release process without creating a tag. So I built, or no, I think I deleted the tag and then just repushed it because I had the tag locally. So I didn't have to re-sign it or anything. I just repushed it, which triggered the release process and populated the release with new builds. So they're new RPMs, technically speaking. But then the build on SUSE failed because in between when the release was first put out and now, SUSE has put out a new dot release of Leap. And when that happens, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, mock moves the configuration for the previous version into an EOL directory. So the automated build against mock against SUSE failed because the configuration it was looking for had moved into EOL. So I built the SUSE one manually and then uploaded it myself. So the release is mostly in a good state. If people are really paying attention, they will notice that they are technically different RPMs. And then best case, GitHub support is able to restore our release to the original state it was in.
Yeah, but that's not really because we don't sign them. So even
Yeah.
then, they would be signed with the same key, and rebuilds happen in distros all the time. And when I released 4.6 for SUSE or prepared a package, I put some stuff inside and it's now merged. I think it will be for the 4.6.1 release, the builds will be reproducible. So even
Yes.
if you rebuild it again, you should come up with exactly the same binary.
Yeah.
So, or at least the same, if you build it at the same day, because the day where it's built is still somewhere in some time things, so that you can still kind of track this. But there are not that many binary changes anymore. And for example, I think that the binary itself should be the same.
Yeah. So I'm not too I'm pretty okay with the current state, and like Christian said, we've been getting the reproducibility of the build better and better over time, and thank you for putting all the work into that and convincing me of it. Um, I did, just because it was Sunday evening and because we didn't know what permissions were where, I did bump Tim back down to triage role, which, and he can review PRs, but his review is not effective for allowing it to be merged in the current state. I just want to, but I want to bring to the committee whether we leave him there or bump him back up to right.
No, keep him back.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I don't need those. I don't need those privileges.
No, you need that privileges.
I was saying, like, I only like having like one or two gatekeepers that we can blame for everything.
I guess that's fair. I mean, Tim, if you don't want that access because you don't want the risk of it, I can respect that too. I know that I have appreciated you being able to review PRs, and that has been helpful.
Now that I know I have those privileges and it's a privileged account, I will treat it as such. The issue was twofold. One, I didn't realize that I had all those privileges. And I guess the other one, I'll make a comment. The reason why I was mucking around with it is because there wasn't a button for me to recreate the release for my own purposes, and that's why I was deleting. So we may want to look into that issue.
I have already specifically written, and what I intend to do is, as I'm pushing out 4.6.1, I'll make a change to the automation to allow that. It's just like one line in the GitHub config.
I am fine either way. You know, I've been on big systems where bad things can happen if I'm in there, and I know how to deal with it. I just didn't know I was there, so I didn't know how to behave appropriately.
Well, we all learned something. I definitely didn't understand that either.
The other thing we may want to consider is those release notes probably should be in a file within the repository as well. So
yeah, that's the thing.
That's
That's a GitHub specific thing. There is no file you can find. You really have to scrape them from the website. They are storing them not in the repo itself.
So
But
let me ask you about that, because I have that same thought. What is in that like in the release is now a distillation. If we go to docs and here, so they're a distillation of the release notes that are here. So this is a more expanded one, and I just didn't want to paste this entire thing into the GitHub release. So I don't know where I would put the distilled one.
Just have a releases thing in the repository, and just before you release it, you put those in there.
Yeah,
And
just do it there. Okay.
I don't. Me personally, I never like to have web interfaces where that's the only living version of it. I always have the source material come from some other interface.
How would you feel about, because the other thing I can think of is that we could put it in the change log.
Just call it release notes.
Okay. Yeah, just release notes thing underneath as a separate MD.
I have seen automations where it can suck in stuff from the repo to populate the release. I just know that it might be possible. Beyond that, I have not done any investigations, but it might not be worth the effort to do it. It might be just easier to copy and paste it.
I will plan to do that, and I'll try to go grab like whatever release notes we have from the existing GitHub releases to backfill it.
In retrospect, another option would have been to immediately release a 4.6.1, which was just a rebuild.
Yeah. I think I like this better though.
I agree.
That.
Because it was just a mechanical error.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to discuss on that issue? I expect probably not, but okay. We did get one more person join. Who is KL Buter?
I'm unmute there. Sorry, I'm Kevin Buterbaugh from Sandia Labs. I work
Okay.
with Evan and Alex. So
Great.
Nice to meet
Thanks for
you
joining.
here.
thanks.
All right. Let's talk about 461. To not put too fine a point on it, the only thing still currently tagged for 461. Oh, okay. No, there's two things. Great. Because I did want to talk about this too. Christian, when I
added this so the command line it's adding is really a SUSE specific one. Other kernels won't recognize it.
Oh, it won't do anything.
They won't do anything. It just pulls the SUSE kernel back to the standard behavior.
Okay. Do you know, because the reason I went back and forth and I was confused is that the only place I see it is in the
checked
docs.
it. I added it in the just for the build in the builds in the open build service for the SUSE package.
Okay.
And I don't use the spec file we have at GitHub because for SUSE it's available for the package name.
Oh yeah, sure. It makes sense to me that you
reason.
would have your own spec, but why do you, and this is not like a huge pushback challenge. I really just want to understand. Why do you want a SUSE specific kernel argument as a default setting in upstream rather than just having it in the SUSE pointed package?
Just that I can't forget about it.
Okay, fair enough.
That's the only reason. Just so now it's so if it's not upstream, you always upstream things if it's possible, and it's really just pushing back this SUSE kernel to the vanilla behavior.
So this for people that haven't been following this, the Christian is requesting that we add net.if names equals 1 as a default kernel argument. It of course could be removed. The understanding now is that I have now from Christian is that this wouldn't do anything on non-SUSE systems, but that on SUSE systems it makes them do like F0, F1, or it makes them do predictable
the standard
interfacing.
one. So with this not set with net if names equals 0, it's the it's a SUSE-specific behavior, and it will then try to retain the old ETH names, even if they are not supported anymore. And then bad stuffs happen that our network interfaces completely get mangled.
So this one makes it do like the new standard persistent device name thing.
Exactly, and then it accepts the UDEF rules.
Okay.
This is
I have
kind
no
of the UDEF script. It searches for this command line and skips then the SUSE specific stuff if it's set. And then
Okay.
so even if it doesn't have this, it tries. So we have the UDEF rule we set, so the Werewolf sets, and then the SUSE UDEF commands also go through and want to do different things. And then
Okay.
many things break.
With that understanding, I don't have a concern with this. Christian has already done the work to put it into like the Werewolf control upgrade stuff, so that's all great. The tests are updated. Any concerns with merging this for 461? All right. Hearing none, I will plan on doing that. So let's talk about this one. I think the only thing left is Christian is trying to get me to merge auth.conf into werewolf.conf. And my reason not is exactly what Tim suggested, that having it separate means that
I understand this. Yeah. The thing, I checked it a bit today. If it would be really easier to, there is a PAM authentication module, but it's kind of like PAM. It's really hard to use and understand, and I did not find any example of anyone using this with Go, because I think, or no, not I think, this is a full root write. So if you ask this user we are creating here, and this access gives you the full control of the server.
in theory, yes.
In
If there were
practice. So okay, in theory you are right, because no, you are not even right, because we can create overlays, and the overlays run on the host. You could not trigger it within but the overlays are really going as root inside.
Yeah, because you can well, actually the API doesn't let you create overlay. You can make a directory, but you can't actually put files in it yet. But you're right that the intent is to do that.
Yeah. And even if, and then we don't check, we cannot mitigate this. The only real mitigation would be, and that's the other thing, is just running the complete service inside a container.
The what service?
The complete Werewolf service inside a
Oh,
container.
yeah, the complete service, yeah. Or
the complete
just
service
not
running in the container, then you get away. And the thing is, we always have to run this as root, because when we create the images, we just copy the UIDs over.
Yeah.
And so www control always must run as root. And we could perhaps run it as a classical service with this all kind of thingies, so that you translate the UIDs, something like this. But then on the other hand, then if you want this kind of security, then you can really run it just completely as a container.
Yeah. I am supportive of and also desire making Werewolf D, the Werewolf server, less and less privileged, and somehow, whether it's by containerizing it or finding some way to not have to do it.
Yeah, it would be no. We cannot run it unprivileged because of this whole container creation things.
Yeah.
But then we just have to perhaps add some bits and notches that we can run it inside a container.
Yeah.
This would be the thing that we say, okay, we run the at least the TFTP server so that we get rid of a separate TFTP service. So we serve now HTTP. And so the question is, why don't we just use this Go implementation of TFTP and also do the TFTP transfers? Then the only thing what would be then an external service would be DHCP.
Mhm.
So that you would then have two containers, or just one container with running Warewulf D and a DHCP service, or just or just two containers which are kind of connected. You get it, Pon?
Yeah, I agree. I think rather than bringing TFTP in, I'd be more interested in just using like moving the DHCP to DNS mask and using its TFTP server. But that still just gets you to two things.
Yeah.
Regardless, how do we feel about merging this for now?
The thing is, we have to put some kind of big warning, or I don't know how to make sure that people don't forget that the password you set there is it's kind of, you have to apply all the security policies to it.
Yeah.
And it's in your responsibility.
I think that an additional warning both in auth.conf, so that currently has a comment in it that tells you how to
I
generate the
saw that
password.
one. Or
A warning that tells you, by the way, this account can effectively gain root privileges. So
or
be
could
aware.
we kind of just set a kind of just that you could say in the AU file, use the shadow one, use the root shadow one.
Well, that would then require you have a root password, and lots of people don't have a root password on their
Yeah,
server.
but then it would at least it would not just be the only possibility. Then you could point at a security review and say, yeah, that's in the shadow. We are out of it. And if you don't have a shadow, then you have to take care. But we can then tell in a security audit, yeah, we are secure. You can just point the default configuration is it uses the shadow password.
And the default configuration is the whole API system is turned off and it doesn't respond at
that's
all.
for sure. Yeah, but if you want to use the API, then the default one would be it uses the shadow, the root password from shadow, and then we are still out. And then it's another step. Then if users want,
I wouldn't use shadow without doing it through PAM. So if we were going to do that, I would
then
want to
you
do it
want
by
to go
bringing
PAM.
in.
Yeah, but PAM is complicated. It's not that easy to get a PAM password over. The thing is with PAM that the PAM always wants to read the password itself. So you cannot just give it in an easy way just a copy from somewhere, a string, and then say, is this the password? I think that's not that easy possible for design.
Oh, it should be possible, but I haven't looked at PAM with Golang at all.
Yeah, I looked at it half an hour and it was kind of, oh yeah, I don't understand what's going on there.
Will some of this change if SSL's enabled?
No.
Do you mean the concerns or the practice?
If you have client certs and things like that, is that something that would be more applicable at that point, or it would be preferable, I guess?
Would what be preferable?
To do the authentication stuff through the SSL.
I think if you did that, then we'd want to support certificate auth and let you just auth by presenting a client certificate.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. And then you wouldn't need passwords at all. But
the thing what I was wanting to ask is how will this then work together with Cockpit?
So Cockpit has an HTTP client library in it, and it runs HTTP connections against a local network. So you don't need to expose this outside of the server to use it.
That would be a point. Why expose this? Or at least adding to the configuration, is it possible that we expose that API just to localhost?
or at least have a default configuration that is
That it,
specified that way.
yeah.
Um, I don't have an
Would then,
objection to that.
Hmm?
I don't have an objection to that.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know if we then could run on the same port.
Yeah, because it would just be the API handler would be the thing checking it and rejecting it. So
Okay.
let
Yeah.
me find it. So
Perhaps
yeah, we'll look
that's
into it.
another thing that you give in the config which interface it wants. And if
Yeah.
you say,
Or I just say like what sources would be the easier thing, and if the source is 127.0.0.1, then it's fine.
yeah. And then this would then also still enable the whole cockpit thing, and then we don't
Mhm.
have to care about the certificates and encryption. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
wrong with that. Because then this will be handled by cockpit.
So if there is a client filter, you would be okay with merging this?
Yeah.
Okay. I will plan to add that today then.
Cool.
And I'll plan to get this merged. I might not get these things done today, but I will plan to get this merged before 461 as well and get that in. And then we'll put out a release and it'll be glorious.
It'll be glorious. What about
And
the diskful installation?
let's talk about that for 462 maybe.
Uh,
Speaking of which, so there
that's the
are
question. Because also Greg wanted to the earthing thing. It was really that I have to admit was the easiest part to add for this PR. The
Yeah.
thing is this debugging the script which kind of runs formats the disk and dumps it. That's the most
that's the hard part.
it's not really hard, but it takes you a long time because you're always booting a machine and have to wait for all the timeouts, and then suddenly oh, I don't have anything here. What's going wrong here?
So I do want to talk about that. Oh, this is still open. Real quick for 462. These are the things that are currently tagged for the release. I think this one, the retry con refused, and another one.
Yeah,
Anyway, I think
but
a couple.
especially the Strahcode ones, I want to have them merged after we get this disk full installation because these are always hard to rebase. Any changes to the Strahcode things are because the disk full installation also goes over Dracode. I always have to understand that and merge them in.
Yeah. A couple of these are going to be obsoleted though. This one, the new solution for Dracut won't conflict with you because it just adds a new file.
Yeah, that one is okay.
The big thing that I'm interested in for 462 is right now the new resources system doesn't give you a way to specify them from a Werewolf control like node add or node set. My current proposal in this issue is to let people specify it with JSON. But I'll
I
put something
didn't
together
check that one. Is it an issue? It's an issue. Okay.
Yeah, it's an issue. It's not a PR.
I don't
It's
care
just
about issues. I just care about pull requests.
so these may or may not end up being part of the release, but that's what's currently tagged there. There is a 46x milestone now that has stuff that I think is viable for a 46 something. So, not necessarily right now while we're sitting on the call, but if you're interested in what might get into an upcoming release, you have stuff that you'd want to see in a 462. I recommend looking through this list and pulling out your favorite stuff and asking for it to be moved to 462, or if you have access, doing so yourself. Now is the time to be doing that.
In terms of the 461 and the NM online wait, I think there
Yeah.
should be a corresponding one to the non-diskless version as well, or the non-two-phase version. Drag out.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, So I don't think it'll apply because the single phase that's done by iPixie or by Grub. And
Yeah,
so
but
the
I'm seeing different issues with the same solution along those. I can reliably not boot Alma Linux without that patch.
okay. Yeah, would you mind creating an issue for it so that we can, or is there already one?
It's
And
spread all over the place. I can create an issue. The big question is does it belong in the container or does it belong as an overlay patch?
I think it belongs in the init overlay, personally. So for people that haven't been following this, there is an issue. It appears to be an actual bug upstream with the way Network Manager's init is configured, in that Network Manager reports network ready when it has brought connections online, but it doesn't actually wait for the interfaces to physically be ready. And so you can get into situations at Dracket where it says that it's ready, but then it can't pull things off of the server yet. And previous attempts to do this were just to keep retrying until it works. But Tim has found a solution that overrides the configuration and changes it so that it actually waits until it's ready.
Yeah, and
But then
I saw the issues in the non-Dracket version, which the solution is almost identical, but with a different service file.
oh, is it? Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I
because
would have thought it was.
they name it differently. It's Network Manager wait online.service. It's the same solution, but you just have to patch a different service file.
But that makes me think. I was thinking that the name would be like a standard thing across Network Manager. If it's possibly different, then maybe it does belong in the images rather than in an overlay, because it might be different in different operating systems, like SUSE versus Rocky.
Yeah, and they might have different behaviors as well, right?
Yeah.
So I would
Okay.
tend to put it in there and document it. It
Yeah.
seems a lot cleaner to do it. And then the next question is, do you create an override file or do you actually patch the OS?
I like the override file, frankly, but
It makes it more obvious.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can put a comment in there saying what you're doing, that kind of thing.
Okay, I'll stamp one out. I'll get that out relatively soon. Those two patches I think go well together along with the stateful one, which I do like the code. I just haven't had a chance to fully test it, Christian.
Oh, thank you.
All right. We're coming down to the end of time, but Rose, is there any news on an SC25 BOF? And while you're talking, have you heard anything about our submission for perk?
Ooh, I have not heard about the submission from Perk yet, but we did submit it and in good time, and they said thank you very much. So that is awesome. The one for SC, we are working on that now, and we have the dates of when that is due. So we'll let you guys know. The editing suggestions that you gave for the Perk one was really wonderful. So thank you, everybody who took the time to read that over and give suggestions.
Awesome. The next thing then, Christian, is stateful, and I know there's not a lot of time left, but do you have like, what can you tell us about how it works? Like, I would love an actual code walkthrough of how it works and
Oh,
an
the thing
explanation
is,
of it.
you can just pull the it
You want me to just open the PR?
yeah, you just open the PR and then go to the old one. Yeah, persistent without
The
async.
old one or
That's the
this
thing.
one?
Yeah, the persistent without
Okay.
async. Files changed. Well, not so many files changed. I think it's load www.init.shell. That's really the most one.
I'm gonna change this to, how does it work? Is it here? I think it's here. Yeah.
Didn't know that it is possible. Yeah, it has this function which will set up the disk. So that's kind of, that was more or less for the, I'm just calling this function one. And you see the rsync part is still there. I just commented it out in this PR.
Okay.
The thing, it will mount a disk. So it will, so you have to specify the disk at a given point. And that's the one it will use the disk as rootfs, which is labeled /rootfs. Okay? And
like an actual label in the partition table.
yeah,
Or
actual
file
label
system
in the
label or whatever.
partition table.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
it downloads this JSON file, but transforms this that that in the partition table the rootfs is just transformed to just /root. So that this will then look right in the partition table.
Okay. Okay, so it's getting dev disk by label rootfs. Okay, and then what did you say it does so it will look right in the partition table?
It will just be /. It will be just be root.
Okay. Yeah.
So that yeah, and then it will just configure and set up this disk, and then dump the CPR on it, and that's it.
Okay. From that, I think the only I know this is a little bit bike shedding. I like the idea of this as being dub root instead of rootfs, just so we don't have the issue of if someone has a rootfs partition label already. Werewolf root
Yeah,
is a little bit
then he's doomed.
right.
Right, but if
but
you shouldn't have that label in your system.
A rootfs?
That's a magic value, yeah. But you always have to have magic values at some point. And
Right. I'm
rootfs
just
is
saying,
kind
like, I think dub root, like if it was www root, it might be less likely to be something they already have in their system. So I think
yeah,
it would make
perhaps
that's a really small thing, but I think that would be just a tiny
yeah,
bit
and
safer.
then the only thing you really have to set is that I'm actively exploiting this root variable we already have in the configuration. So normally we set it root to wwinit,
Yeah.
and now we are setting
in
it to
Dracket.
persistent.
Yeah.
So that this script knows what to do, and that's it. And that's the commented out part. It would have been the rsync part.
Mhm.
So there it creates just in www in Werewolf in /Werewolf it creates a file with the name of the used image. So that it knows if it finds that file, it would have had run the rsync part and just updating the stuff which has changed. And for that, it will always just dump the CPR archive on disk.
So where is it getting run ignition JSON or ignition rootfs.json from? Oh wait, no, it's writing it here.
It's running
It's
it.
okay, it's curling it from Werewolf ignit ignition, which is coming from the command line or something like that, I presume.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the rest is really just the stages like we had before.
Okay. I presume this still makes it not work on Rocky 8 though, and Alma 8.
I don't know. The thing with if we have any sane alternative to ignition, I'm really happy with it because ignition it's kind of the whole syntax of it is not nice.
Okay.
Not understandable. I just chose that one because I was pretty sure because it's an upstream Fedora project.
Yeah, sure.
That was really the only reason for that.
Okay, that's fair enough. And you're using it here to it tells it what file system type mostly, I suspect, because you're not using it to select a partition.
Oh no, that's anything inside. It's kind of the same configuration we do right now for the disk configuration.
I just mean as opposed to like running E2FS or whatever against the partition. Like you're not assuming what file system type you're getting it from.
No,
ignition,
I'm not assuming here anything. I assume that this is configured in the ignition file.
Well, you are assuming you're going to write it to dev disk by part label rootfs, which would it probably you're changing that in the ignition JSON, right? You're
Yeah,
whatever might be there, you're adding it to it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I really appreciate the walkthrough. I do think this is easier to digest. Um,
Yeah, and then there are just some other things, setting the variables, and in the overlay we have to. That's one thing we could do as a side project if we had someone and get familiar with the Werewolf code. We have these. We still have two ways to render templates. We have the one rendering the templates we are speaking all the time, and then there's a hidden template rendering, which is, for example,
inside of
the
the server.
grub.www.
Yeah. I think I have an issue already open for
Yeah.
unifying that.
Yeah, and if this is unified, we won't need that changes anymore because I'm just
I see.
I
Yeah,
just realized, oh yeah, we don't know the image name and other things.
right. Okay, that makes sense.
And for example, all the just some small stuff, and then that's the documentation.
All right. Any questions for Christian on this? I know we're still gonna do reviews, and I am with you. Like I want to try and find a way to get this merged. I would like to see it in 4.6.2.
Yeah,
I really
that would be
appreciate
great.
you cutting this down. I will
Yeah,
have like
the
stuff I
thing
would want
is,
to change,
it's
but we'll
just
see.
I don't want to. I still didn't find the time. I think we can change it even for that. If we also dump, or perhaps even it's enough that if you just configure the AFI partition, it would then be AFI compatible, I think.
Oh, to just boot it directly with EFI instead of
Yeah, this
yeah.
should be possible because the setup disk does not just only set up the root FS, it will set every disk which is configured.
Right.
And so the EFI would, I don't know where it would be, but it should be mounted then at the right location. I just didn't check that out. Then it would be even possible to do EFI mounts.
That would
EFI
be cool
boots.
then if you have like an EFI boot partition, if dub and knit, like how we configure like how we optionally configure IPMI with IPMI write, if it could then go configure the EFI partition
Yeah,
to know where it
perhaps.
is. All right, we're out of time, but real quick, Ian, if you're still here, if you haven't left us, how are things going with Debian and Ubuntu support?
I'm still here. Um, well, right now I'm fighting something else entirely of my own making, but things are looking good right now. I've enhanced the NetPlan template so that we can do network bonding. And as I've mentioned before, Ignition works fine. So I have nodes booting with local disks, and Draycut only works on 2410 and above. So I will have to package 2404, and in documentation, we'll have to say you just can't use Draycut right now. Ubuntu itself is moving towards making Draycut the methodology. So it will keep getting enhanced 2410, 2504, which should be out this month. 2510 and then 2604, it will be, period. I just need to set up a really good build environment so I can get those things packaged. And then I will also set up and start fiddling with Debian 12 and make sure things work as expected in a similar fashion.
Do you think so? I guess you're working on packaging at all. Do you see any concerns with once the package, like I don't know anything about Debian packaging. Any concerns with getting that merged into our kind of GitHub CI/CD process so we could start building packages along with the rest of them?
I'd have to go look at the process and see. It should work just fine. I mean, the only difference is what I've been doing typically when I build packages is I push it up to essentially a repo that people can add to their setup and pull automatically.
Yep.
So putting it up into the Warewulf GitHub, they just have to manually download the packages and install them by hand. but it should
Are
work fine.
you, so you're putting into like a PPA or something
Mhm.
like that?
Well,
Okay.
I could. I mean, I have done that in the past for other things I've built,
Okay.
so
I
I
think
could.
if we did that for the Debian and Ubuntu side, I'd be fine with that too. And maybe we would want to make that a more formal decision in the TSC whether we would prefer, and obviously you could still do that also, but whether we would
Mhm.
actually want to be building them locally or just point people to a PPA. Because I still want to try and get the Warewulf packages, like the ones that we're already building, into SUSE OBS or something like that. But
Mhm.
I spent like an entire evening trying to figure out OBS and was frustrated. I got a guy on our team here, Neil, pointed me at someone who might be a good resource for it, but we'll see how that goes. All right, we are over time. Thank you everyone for your time and participation. Anything else that anyone needs before we go? All right. Well, we'll see you all again in a couple of weeks. Thanks all.
Ciao.